On today's show, we'll discuss the investigation into Blazers president of basketball operations Neil Olshey, a couple home wins over the Pacers and the Lakers, and where the Blazers stand after 10 games. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard, Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts, and now also on YouTube. We're over our goal of 1,000 subscribers by Halloween. Now we got to set a new goal. How about 2,000 by soon? Help me get there soon. I haven't picked an arbitrary date yet, like Halloween, but we'll pick one. Help me get to 2,000 subscribers. We're pushing in that direction. Go to YouTube right now. If you're listening to the show and you haven't subscribed, go to YouTube right now. Search Locked On Blazers and subscribe to the show. I would really, really appreciate it. In today's episode, we are going to talk about the investigations into Blazers president of basketball operations, Neil Olshey. His tenure there is potentially coming to an end based on his conduct as the man running the show with the Blazers. We're gonna start talking about that. Absolutely the biggest news of the day happened with the Trailblazers. They also won 2 basketball games at home. They beat the Pacers, beat the Lakers. We'll talk about both of those wins, and now they're 5-5 through 10 games. Let's talk about where they stand. Some stats to know. 10 games into the season. But let's start with the Neil Olshey news. It just follows a run of just bad stuff happening. This franchise has just had a lot of drama around it since the moment the playoffs ended in Denver last at early, I guess, late spring, early summer. The drama just hasn't stopped. They've kind of, they fired their head coach. They kind of had a sloppy hiring. They had a terrible introductory press conference for Chauncey where they just handled it terribly. A coach got fired. A coach got let go after being indicted in federal charges. Damian Lillard maybe reconsidered his place within the organization for the first time in his career, and now we get 10 games into the season. And Neil Olshey is the franchise and owner, Jody Allen, Governor Jody Allen, I guess is what they call people who own basketball teams now, are investigating a hostile work environment within the Blazers under Neil Olshey because staff members say they have been subjected to intimidation and a bunch of profanity-laced tirades and just general sort of hostile and abusive bullying in the workplace under Neil Olshey. So here's kind of what we know right now. I'm recording this late on a Saturday evening into early Sunday morning after the Blazers beat the Lakers. So if by the time you listen to this, if more comes out, we will talk about that then. But this is what we know as of right now, basically midnight on November 7th. The Blazers have hired an outside firm, Melviny and Myers, to investigate a claim by some non-basketball personnel. So like not like players on the team, but like people within the organization. It was first reported by The Athletic, and then later more information came out from Yahoo Sports, Chris Haynes of Yahoo Sports and Jason Quick of The Athletic, along with Shams Charania of The Athletic. According to Haynes, employees were being interviewed beginning this week, so this sort of has started to come about this week, and it is ongoing. It's basically just about the we don't know all the details. I think that's one thing that's clear from the reporting, is that it's mostly just like the vague but quite frankly believable idea that there's a hostile work environment, and that Neil Olshey is has fostered a very toxic workspace, and the Blazers are investigating that. It seems, based on reporting from The Athletic, although they weren't super clear on this, that it maybe started with one employee and then has since the investigation has started many, but it's not clear sort of what spawned, if there was an inciting incident or this was 10 years in the making. From Haynes's reporting, it sounds like this has been ongoing for a long time, but then it's like the why now, we don't really know, but hostile work environment, bullying, just sort of a toxic place to go to work every day under Neil Olshey's reign. And the Blazers have hired an outside firm to investigate their own people to figure out sort of what steps will need to take. Part of this stems from the way Neil Olshey handled the death of video coordinator Zach Cooper, who passed away in April 2020 from, there weren't a lot of details about his death other than it was like a non-COVID death, and it was very sudden. And some of the sort of, it seems maybe the inciting incident was, or the beginning of this sort of getting rolling, was the way Neil Olshey inappropriately handled the passing of video coordinator Zach Cooper, someone who was around the team a bunch, like, was a on the court working guys out all the time. Prior to the shutdown in 2020, prior to the hiatus in 2020, he passed after the league shuts down, and it seems the way that was handled within the organization upset some people. But so that's kind of what we know. It's vague, admittedly, but it's, like I said, it's quite frankly not like this isn't super shocking, because you don't need an investigation to know that Neil Olshey can be an asshole. It's, if you pay attention to this team, if you follow them closely, you've seen his public persona in press conferences. He's prickly, and he can take the smallest little thing and turn it into a beef and be hostile with reporters. In fact, this summer, when he just needed to turn it down to 6 or whatever, every press conference he was just defensive and combative, and particularly prior to the Chauncey Billups introduction, the press conference, announcing the sort of the first postseason press conference of the summer, when he was innocuously asked, like, is your, we fired Terry Stotts, do you believe your job is safe? And he was like, the 29th rating in defense was not a product of the roster, when he just threw Terry Stotts under the bus for no reason. It was just a sloppy thing. He just needed to turn it down in that situation when he desperately needed to be sort of a reasonable face of the franchise. He couldn't do it because that's who he is. You've seen him. Quite frankly, I've covered the team in various capacities for 6 seasons. I was a beat reporter traveling around for 4.5 of those, or 4 of those. I'm not going to share sort of my personal anecdotes, but I will say, I have felt the wrath of Neil Olshey, both for things where I've screwed up and I'm expecting him to be mad, and also petty little things where you kind of get yelled at or cussed at, and you're like, oh, who would have known that this would have upset you, type of thing. He's just, you don't need it. If you paid attention to the way he conducts himself in public spaces, it tracks that he's a jerk, or is capable of being a jerk. I think is maybe a fair way to say that, because I don't know, broadly speaking, what he's like in his private life, but like in the public spaces, even when he's needed to not be so combative, he can't. He is always turned up to 11, and like the scale might be 1 to 4. In addition, and I think this is a big one, you do not need to launch an internal investigation to fire someone. There is no need to do that. If you want to fire someone for being a jerk and creating a hostile work environment and a toxic employment culture, and bullying people and it's sort of the things that were alleged, you just fire them. You fire them immediately. You say you are no longer needed here. You fire them. That's it. You don't have to. There's nothing special that you have to do. You can just fire them. The reason this investigation is being launched, and this is very clear to me, and I want to make it clear to you, is because this is the way the Blazers don't have to pay Neil Olshey the rest of his money. He's under contract through the end of the 2023-24 season. If they fire him, they got to pay him to leave. If he's fired with cause for creating this toxic environment, they don't have to pay him, or they can get out from under the money. You don't need to launch an investigation to fire someone. Rich Cho got fired for being a nerd. Like, too nerdy to work with. I'm glad that I don't get fired for being too nerdy to work with. But like, this is happening for a reason, and there is a financial motivation behind this. Because if this is If this was something that the Blazers were worried about, and an employee comes forward and then multiple employees corroborate this sort of feeling, then you get, or corroborate this reporting, corroborate this environment. It's or the facts that created this environment. It's like, you want to, you have it right there in front of you. You launch this investigation so you can say, here's the finding, here's what our sort of legal team uncovered, and here's why you're being let go without pay. That is what is at play here. I'll say this: I do not know what the outcome is going to be here, because like, if the investigation finds that maybe it's not enough cause to get out from under the money or whatever, maybe you try to make this go away. Here's what I know: I bet we never hear from Neil Olshey in public ever again. Ever again. I bet they don't put him in front of a microphone ever again. If he wasn't capable of doing in sort of times where he wasn't personally under fire, and then he was slightly under fire and wasn't capable of kind of being prepared and dialing it back in introducing Chauncey Billups when he knew what the line of questioning was going to be, and he could just kind of like have some canned responses, say nothing professionally. That's the job. They wouldn't be satisfying answers, but they wouldn't be combative, aggressive answers, right? Like, if he wasn't capable of turning down the heat then, there is no way in hell, when it specifically is about how ornery he can be and how his temper, comes out in the workplace among his coworkers and subordinates. There is just no way no way we ever hear from him in front of a microphone again. I would be stunned if we ever do. What that means, I don't know, but general managers or president of basketball operations, whatever, the front office people are under no obligation to speak to the media under the collective bargaining agreement. I guarantee we will never hear from Neil again. Not guarantee. I am guessing with a great deal of confidence. I don't want to go full Charles Barkley and say guarantee and then be super wrong. Like, I am guessing based on sort of what I know that we never hear from Neil again. We might hear from him through sources. We might hear from him, on background somewhere. We might even hear him quoted directly from someone in the media. But he's never getting a microphone with a Trailblazers, the Trailblazers flag on it ever again. It isn't going to happen. So that is the state of the Blazers. Boy, it's messy there. Couldn't they just play? Couldn't there just be like on-court stuff? Like, we could just be worrying about Damian Lillard shooting a little bit, but this has been who they've been for a few months, is they're a little bit messy. But they're also winning some basketball games. Let's talk about a couple winning basketball games. We kind of know what's going on with Neil, and obviously check back for the space. We'll update it with what happens. If it comes out on Sunday, I guess I'll just record another little emergency podcast updating us. But for now, this is what we know about Neil Olshey, and I imagine we'll get a resolution within the coming week. In the second segment, Blazers beat the Pacers on Friday night. They came back on Saturday night and beat some of the Lakers, but they beat some of the Lakers real bad. So let's talk about those two wins in the second segment. But before we do that, let's talk about Prize Picks. It's the best NBA DFS prop game on the market, offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator, and offers all your superstar players as well as bench players that are only recording a handful of minutes each game. You want to bet on Greg Brown's over-under field goal attempts? You can do that on Prize Picks. They're offering, props on almost anything you can think of. So 3-point attempts, total points, total minutes, steals, blocks in a game, whatever it is. So you can, here's how it works. You go and you pick 2 to 5 players and you pick an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on each entry. And it's just you versus the projected numbers. You're not playing in a big field. You're not playing head-to-head with anyone else. You're not playing with professional bettors. You see the projected numbers, you pick the over-under, and then you win. So listen, and you can get your money quick. It's safe, and you got fast withdrawals. So if you want to do this, don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com or download their award-winning app. And when you do so, make sure you put in the promo code NBA, and you will get a 100% instant match on a deposit up to $100. You put in $100 with that promo code NBA, you get $200 to use on Prize Picks. So why don't you go there now? Like I said, prizepicks.com, or download their app in the App Store. It's Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. Today's show is also brought to you by DirecTV Stream, and y'all know the deal. Sometimes if you're trying to swap between live sports, and then your favorite television shows, and then a movie. You're hanging out on the couch all evening. That means you're switching remotes, you're switching devices, you're juggling logins, all of the hassle that you don't need. So here's a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without that hassle, and it's a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream. It brings you live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more of juggling remotes, no buying new devices, and the best part, no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. All right. So we talked Neil Olshey and the investigation underway with the Portland Trail Blazers. Just a messy time there in Pinwheel Land, or as some have called it, at 1 Center Court, 22 Drexler Drive, if you want to drive to maybe the backside of the arena, and you're really into Google Maps. But the Blazers playing basketball games. Before the game, myself and other reporters who were in the room asked Chauncey Billups kind of like, has this been, what's going on? Like your reaction to it. And he's like, I just like, this is, I have a relationship with Neil and I haven't really seen this, but he also is just like, I don't know any more than what I've read. And there's nothing like, I'm going to talk to my guys about it, but all it is right now is a distraction. And I am so new to this sort of coaching thing that I can't, like, I gotta zero in on these games because like I'm trying to learn this job and guide a really good basketball team, which was kind of like a professional way to say nothing, the type of like saying nothing in a press conference that Neil Olshey could learn from. Maybe not satisfying responses from Chauncey Billups. I'll tell you, there was some media members who maybe aren't typically at Blazer games who are probably pretty frustrated with the nothing that they got from Chauncey Billups, but sometimes that's what you get. And maybe media pros who could teach you how to say nothing. Not satisfying for people who want compelling answers. I totally get that. But sometimes you gotta wiggle out of it, particularly if you aren't the one, if sort of the onus to own up to mistakes isn't on you. So Chauncey Billups focusing on the game. He's now got his team with 2 straight wins over the Pacers and the Lakers. Let's talk about those 2 games. Well, first, let's do the fastest recap in the West. The first ever fastest recap in the West. It's going to be 2 games at once on Friday night. The Portland Trail Blazers beat the Indiana Pacers 110-106. They opened the game on a 17-4 run. Were poised to blow out a Pacers team, and yet the middle 2 quarters were a nightmare. The Blazers fell behind by as many as 9 points in the fourth quarter as that 13-point first quarter lead totally evaporated, but they stormed back, closing the game on an 18-5 run to win 110-106. Damian Lillard struggled against the Pacers, capital S and like 22 G's in that word. He was 2 for 13 from the floor, 0 of 6 from 3, matched his career low with just 4 points. He did have 11 assists. Like, he played an okay floor game, but he was getting locked up by TJ McConnell. TJ McConnell put the clamps on Dame, who looked like he was playing through mud. This was the game against the Pacers where it just seemed like while Dame is not on the injury report and has vehemently denied his physical limitations, it is clear that he is limited in somewhat physically, and the physical limitations mixed with him pressing a little bit to try to get untracked and become the shooter that he knows he can be just led to a horrific shooting night. 0 of 6 from 3, again, 4 points. But luckily the Blazers were bailed out by Robert Covington, who hit 5 3-pointers, including a clincher just right at the top of the key 3 with 14.7 seconds left to put the Blazers up 4 and help them hold on. CJ McCollum in that game had 27. Norman Powell had 25. And Anthony Simons came off the bench, 16 points and hit 4 3-pointers. And just awesome game from 3 guards, none of whom were Damian Lillard, the Blazers' 4th best guard on the night. But the Blazers win 110-106. That looked like it was going to be a troubling and bad loss. The Blazers had a little trouble slowing down TJ McConnell. They had a little trouble cracking the Pacers zone. And then all of a sudden, it's an impressive win. And big shot Robert, large shot Bob Covington It's 5 threes and two big ones in the fourth quarter to keep the Blazers, put the Blazers back in the win column. And then they had to come back the next night and play the Los Angeles Lakers. No LeBron James in this one. Anthony Davis was a game time decision with a thumb injury. He warmed up, had a brace on his thumb, and played 7 minutes and then left with a stomach bug. Basically, after the game, Frank Vogel said he had been throwing up a bunch prior to the game. He vomited 4 times prior to tip-off. He thought maybe he could play and kind of get over it. He was not. Played 7 minutes, never came back, left the bench, and did not return. And the Blazers did not feel bad for the visitors wearing Forum blue and gold. 36-14 after one. Just a walloping from the beginning. Damian Lillard scored or assisted on 6 of the first 7 buckets, had 10 points in the first quarter, and it was like, oh, he looks okay. Hit a couple jumpers, like clean, smooth, rip the net type jumpers that kind of looked like Dame. Middle quarters, he didn't shoot. He wasn't perfect from the field. I thought he missed some makeable shots and kind of got stuck in the middle of the lane a couple times on drives, but the Blazers were just shellacking the Lakers, so it didn't really matter. There's no reason to nitpick. Blazers led by 15 at halftime after kind of a bad close to the second quarter, but absolutely ended all doubt with a 42-point third quarter that saw them push their lead to as many as 34. The fourth quarter was entirely meaningless. 12 full minutes of garbage time. Dame led all scorers with 25, 9 of 19, and 6 of 14 from 3. A little more on his game in a moment. Russell Westbrook had one of the worst performances I've ever seen from someone who's going to make the Hall of Fame. He had 8 points and 6 turnovers. He was 1 of 13 from the floor, but 1 of 13 doesn't, like, that box score does not do justice how bad Russ was in this game. He shot an air ball like 4 feet right and 2.5 feet short. It missed by like 7 total feet, just not even triangulated near the rim whatsoever. He was smoking layups. He was throwing the ball out of bounds. He was just awful. Like, so bad. And it's like, no LeBron, no AD. And this could be, AD sounds like his thumb's okay. But like, the Lakers just look so bad. I cannot stress enough. Satisfying win for the Blazers because they just beat the snot out of a team. Did not play with their food. It kind of looks like at the end of the second quarter, that they were going to kind of, they've had some trouble against the Pacers. They kind of did the same thing. They just melted down at the end of the first and gave up some points, and then melted down at the end of the half and gave up the lead. And, just like gave, final 2 minutes of each quarter, just kind of give away the game. They did not do that. They, held on to that 15-point lead and then just boat race the Lakers in the third quarter. Ball game. So that's your fastest recap in the West. A little bit slower this time because we had 2 games. This is your normalist recap in the West. But Blazers are now 4-1 at home, 0-4 on the road, heading into a long road trip, which begins Tuesday against the Clippers, and then back-to-back in Phoenix Wednesday against the Suns. Wednesday against the Suns, Friday in Houston against the Rockets, Sunday in Denver. That's the first of a back-to-back on the road in Denver. They come back Monday. Welcome home. They play the Toronto Raptors on the second night of a back-to-back. Just a brutal November schedule where it includes 6 back-to-backs. Whew. But Damian Lillard kind of got his groove back, and then at the end of the third quarter, got his groove back. He looked more like himself in this game, 6 of 14. I think if you watched it closely, he still did not look like himself. He's not quite there, but this was just box score. If you're box score scouting, this smelled a little more like a Damian Lillard game, and his 6-14 from 3 is a good shooting night. That's he would be happy with going 6-14 every night, and I think that's actually kind of a reasonable number of threes for him to take in the run of play as well. He can really shoot it. You can go ahead and get him up, but. An anecdote that I think kind of shows where the Blazers are at. In the middle of the third quarter, Damian Lillard was dribbling up the left side of the court and shot like a 40-footer from the coach's box that hit the back rim and came off strong. And after the game, I asked Chauncey Billups, so what are you thinking when your point guard takes a 40-footer? And Chauncey Billups said, I love it. I told him to shoot it. And he admitted that he didn't tell him to shoot it from to quote Chauncey Billups, 40 feet. That was a little surprising, but he wanted him to shoot it. He wanted him to go down and just go ahead and get your shots. And I think if you watch the final 4.5 minutes of that third quarter, Damian Lillard was getting up practice shots. He was trying to find the rhythm. He was no longer playing a basketball game. He was practicing. He was trying to dial in his range. He's been off all year long. It's the worst, the worst stretch of shooting probably of his career to begin this season. He's particularly been, below 25% off pull-up threes when he's like he was near 40% last year on pull-up three-pointers. Like he was elite at it, one of the greats in the game at shooting deep threes off the dribble, and he can't make any threes off the dribble this year. He's shooting, making less than a quarter of them. And I think Chauncey Billups, knowing that, was just like, go get yourself some shots, go hunt some shots, and just launch away from three. We're beating the snot out of this team. They cannot handle us, and the game's over. They quit. Anthony Davis saw his team down by 20 and had a tummy ache. He had to go home. He might actually be sick, but I had to get these jokes off. So I like that from Billups. This is kind of what you want from him, a guy who recognizes what it's like to be a player and says, screw playing the right way. Go get yourself. We need you to be you. Go get yourself some points. I thought that was notable. And I don't know if Dame's like snapped out of it or whatever. He had 5 threes last Friday and then had a horrific week away from home. Now, Saturday night is over 0 of 6 Friday night against the Pacers. If we had just had a different recording schedule, I'd be like deeply worried about Damian Lillard. In fact, after that Pacers game, I asked Chauncey, are you worried about Dame? And he said, no. I said, why not? I said, why would I be? He's a dude in his prime, one of the best shooters in the game, one of the best players in the league. I'm not worried about him. And I thought to myself, well, I'm a little worried about him straight up. And then, comes out and hits 6 threes, shoots, above 40% from 3. And you're like, okay, well, he's still pretty good. This was a step in the right direction. He needs several steps for us to not be on sort of Dame watch when he made his first jumper in the first quarter, and it sounded nice and looked clean. It was just like, it just ripped through. It's like, okay, like that was notable how clean it was coming off his hand. I actually watched him warm up today. I don't know, maybe he works out while I'm doing pregame media, but like I hadn't had the opportunity to like watch Dame get his pregame shots up. And he was not, I have seen him shoot way better in warmups than he was shooting tonight. And I was like, some bad misses, just like, and NBA dudes, when they shoot unguarded practice threes, like Dame shoots like 80%. So, when he's shooting poorly, he's shooting 70 something percent. Like he's still ripping through the nets. These dudes are very talented. But, I was like, that wasn't sort of the Dame shooting displays I've just like casually watched throughout my years around the team. I've been like, damn, God, what a pleasure it is to watch this dude warm up. But I kind of made a point of, I wanted to see it today to see if like in practice time he was struggling. He wasn't like I said, he wasn't as wild as I've seen him, but it wasn't like notable. He wasn't just like so notably off the mark. The only notable thing is he didn't finish his workout with a dunk. He used to do that, but I haven't seen him through COVID and the beginning of this season. I basically haven't seen him get through a pregame warm-up in 2 years. So maybe in the last 2 years he doesn't finish his workouts with dunks anymore. But I think there is something physically bothering Dame. Like he's admitted he against the Cavs, he that abdominal thing that he deals with at the beginning of every season and flared up at the Olympics was bothering him again. And I just think you can watch him and he doesn't have some of the explosion that he's had. I'm not going to do some like biomechanics shit and like tell you what Dame needs to do. I'm sure you can find that somewhere else, but like, you could just watch him and know that he's not right. I think that's I'm willing to say that. But he looked better in this game. And I liked that end of the third quarter where his coach said, go get yourself a rhythm. I think that's good stuff. So we're 2 games in, or Blazers are 5-5 after a 2-game winning streak is what I'm trying to say here. A really frustrating road trip, and now they go back on the road. But what I want to do to close the show is talk about they're 10 games in, 5-5, kind of numbers to know from the Blazers' first 10 games of the season. That's what we'll do in the third segment. But first, let me tell you about Built Bar. It's the best tasting protein bar that there is. And listen, if you are living in the United States of America, it's that time of year when we Americans Go heavy on the calories, heavy on the sweets. We're heading into Thanksgiving and then the winter holidays and all of the things that come with the winter holidays and work parties and your friends getting together. And there's a lot of time to eat sweets. So what if I told you this? One slice of pie, pushing up towards 300 calories. But if you need something sweet that will get your fix in between pieces of pie or instead of piece of pie, why not grab a Built Bar? Most of them are only 130 calories with 4 grams of sugar, packed with plenty of protein, 17 to 18 grams per bar. So why not replace the coconut cream pie with the coconut Built Bar or a raspberry Built Bar instead of that raspberry key lime pie that my wife makes? It might be cranberry key lime pie. It might be, but still, replace it with that raspberry Built Bar. It's low calorie, low carb, low fat, high protein. It's covered in 100% chocolate. It'll meet your sweet fix without loading you up with empty calories. So grab a Built Bar, whether you're doing it around the holidays or just leading up to them, to make sure that you're, not loading up on wild calories, but still getting yourself a treat. Plus, there's going to be new surprises all month long. So make sure you are checking built.com regularly to see the limited flavors that are arriving. Listen, Built Bar is money. So just go get yourself some. Built.com. Use that promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. We talked about the investigations into Neil Olshey's, the work environment he has created within the Trail Blazers. We talked about their 2 wins over the Pacers and the Lakers, and Damian Lillard kind of finding a rhythm after a slow start. But now we are 5 games in, or we're actually 10 games in, twice 5. Blazers are 5-5. 5 wins at home. 5-5. They're 4-1 at home, 0-4 on the road. But I want to talk about here is the numbers to know 10 games into the season. And quite frankly, y'all, I mess up a lot of numbers in the lead into this. So I didn't give you a lot of reason to trust me reading numbers off my notes, but I'm going to nail them here. The Blazers are 5-5. I know that one, and they've played 10 games. But here's the numbers to know. I think kind of what we've wanted to see from this team is a step forward on defense while maintaining their level as an elite offense. Last year, they were second in offense by the end of the season and 29th in defense. So they were second in offense and second to last in defense. They were really good on one end and really, really bad on the other. And the idea is that they still have all their offensive weapons and they can maintain their level of offensive dominance and take real steps forward on defense. So where are they through 10 games into the season? According to cleaningtheglass.com, my preferred website, a stat site for this, because Cleaning the Glass does not include garbage time. So it weeds out kind of the meaningless minutes. Like the fourth quarter against the Lakers tonight will not be included in net rating. So it's just during the competitive portions of the game, where do you rank? The Blazers are 7th overall in offense. That's points per possession. They're 7th in the league in points per possession. I think that's a good space to be, considering how bad Dame's been on offense. They're still a top 10 offense when their best offensive player hasn't been very good. If Dame gets rolling, this team jumps into the top 5, no problem. I think Rocco getting hot the last 3 games, like looking like himself over the last 3 games. Norman Powell just has been solid as hell. CJ McCollum, after some down, kind of slumping along with Dame, has looked a little bit better. And Anthony Simons is just an awesome offensive player and has stepped into a larger role as an awesome offensive player, quite frankly. Cody Zeller, an efficient enough offensive player, even though it's not, he's not a big volume guy, but he helps. And Yusuf Nurkic, who's been up and down, has been kind of about what he's been for his career. And when you put all those parts together, the Blazers are still the 7th best offense in the league through 10 games, despite Damian Lillard, one of the great offensive forces, playing like, I don't know, like many nights, the Blazers' 2nd, 3rd, and 4th best guard on the court. His floor game has been really good, but his shooting has been really bad. And despite all that, 7th in offense. There is nothing to read there but positive with clear room to grow. I think you got to feel good about where they are on the offensive end. On the defensive end, They're 17th according to Cleaning the Glass. And I read that as great, quite frankly. I think if the Blazers are right there, a slightly below average defense, and their offense takes a step forward, they're going to be one of the good teams. If they climb on defense, which I think they can, they've had some moments when they've looked good and more moments when they've looked bad on defense, and they still, in the competitive run, according to Clean Glass, they're 17th in the league. A slight, 15th would be league average, so slightly below league average on defense. Like, I feel good about that, quite frankly. The numbers, maybe, you've seen moments where the Blazers look hapless on defense, where their rotations are slow, or they're off the mark, or there's two guys scrambling there, or no one scrambling there, or they're just letting someone just matador right past them to the rim, and then you got to help, and when you help, you're just leaving wide open shooters, or they're helping early and leaving a guy wide open. Like, you've seen it if you watch close. Like, there are moments when they're just leaving guys unguarded unguarded on the perimeter, or they're just letting people get to the cup too easy. But I think 17th, all things considered, is a good spot to be, because there's some stuff you can clean up. I think it's not like they're playing to their defensive potential, but I don't have faith in this team being like a top 10 defense, but I think they could clearly be a little bit better. And there's been times when they've been really bad. They were, prior to this game against the Lakers, they were somewhere in the low 20s. I believe they were 22nd. So, like, still small sample size, an absolute beatdown, giving up 36 points in the first half to just a horrific Laker team that's just horrific, really boosted their defensive rating. So again, we're still in the sort of, 20 games is maybe a more representative sample size, but I think both places where they are, room for improvement in both places, you can't complain. I think if they stay at 17th all year, which is very reasonable, I would say I wouldn't say mission accomplished, but yeah, that's not terrible news. That puts them at 10th in net rating. They finished with the 10th best record in the NBA last year. This is who they were a season ago, and they're trending back towards being kind of that level of team again. You want to see them take a step forward, and I think their offense can take a step forward. Their defense has already improved a great deal compared to last year. Last year they were also 29th according to Clean the Glass numbers. So they've made a significant strides on the defensive end so far. Better defensive personnel and more commitment to that end from the players, and a new scheme from Chauncey Billups has kind of pushed them up. If the offense climbs back up into the top 5, this team has a chance to improve on last year's finish when they were the sixth best team in the West. We'll see if they get there. What's the best lineup so far through 10 games? Well, it's Damian Lillard plus the bench. That's Dame, Anthony Simons, Nazir Little, Larry Nance, and Cody Zeller. That's about as good as it gets. According to Clean the Glass's numbers, that group has played a measly 48 possessions together, but they have a plus 27 net rating. So that's they're outscoring opponents in their brief time together by 27 points per 100 possessions. That's basically the end of the first quarter, or like middle of the first quarter lineup. That's after that first sub, and they bring everyone in. They leave Dame out with the bench. Like that group, be it a very small sample, absolutely blitzing teams. They've been fantastic. The big thing coming in the year was the Blazers starters were awesome, and it was like, can they get the contributions from the bench? Simons, absolutely. Nazir Little, he's been good too. Those have helped. Larry Nance, I don't think has lived up to my expectations for him. I thought he would be better. Cody Zeller's just been solid as hell. They have better depth, so that helps with that bench unit. But the starting lineup was supposed to be this team that just, was supposed to be this team's strength, and in part because Damian Lillard just hasn't shot well. This team is they're not as good as they were a season ago. The starters, they are 11th in net rating among the 18 lineups in the league that have played at least 150 possessions together. They're kind of below average compared to all the other high usage teams or high usage lineups. This is something I've learned from Nate Duncan, the Dunked On podcast, is like, all of the high usage lineups in the league are going to be pretty good, because if they were not good, they wouldn't be a high usage lineup. Like, you'd try something else. So like, typically lineups that play a lot are typically good. So I think it's best to sort of not compare them to league average, but to compare them to one another. So among the high usage lineups in the league, the Blazers are 11th in net rating. That's 5th in offense and 17th in defense. 17th out of 18. So of the high usage lineups in the league, the Blazers starting lineup is bad. One of the bad defensive groups. And I think that tracks. I don't think Dame has looked good at all on defense this year. He's had his moments, particularly early in the season, but I thought the last road trip, and even some minutes against the Pacers and the Lakers, you could see him just not keeping his guy in front of him the way, like Avery Bradley got a downhill early in the game against the Lakers. And I was like, oh no. And TJ McConnell had 19. It was like really freaking good in that Pacer game on Friday night. He can be better. I think he's right now the weak link in that defensive group, but also like just collectively, early in the year, I thought Robert Covington was not in fitting the scheme particularly well. That's my concern with that group. Last year they were like among the high usage lineups above average. They were pretty good. And so the test is for them to be still elite among the groupings to play a bunch together, an elite offense. You want them to be 1 or 2. Like that's Norm, CJ, and Dame is really a lot of firepower, and Robert Covington's hitting threes again. That's like they can score. So you want to see that. Like Nurk was really good against the Lakers. Hit all 6 of his shots, had 17 and 15. Like he's capable if he takes his time. They just got to. The Lakers were also just really bad on defense. So you got to DeAndre Jordan and Dwight Howard couldn't handle Nurk. And so like this team has capable of being awesome on offense. I'm worried a little bit about that starting group's defense under this new kind of less conservative scheme where you can't kind of just coax enough bad jumpers and sort of ride the numbers because you're giving up. You're not playing as aggressive, so there's less room for mistakes. They're playing more aggressive, and that group isn't stopping people right now. So what I'll be watching over the next 10 games is how good that starting group can be on offense. That's the numbers to know. The Blazers' offensive defensive ratings, their best lineup, and what I think of their starting group that had been a strength last year. We're starting to get to that point where the stats, and I'm someone who is at least statistically inclined. I'm not a crazy numbers and graphs guy, but I'm statistically inclined to think the numbers help us learn more about the game. So I'll share them with you. But we're getting to the point where they're more meaningful. So I instead of kind of giving you the caveat, we can use them as to know what we've seen and try to help us think of what we might see in the future. So we're getting there 10 games in. Huge road trip this week. These are good teams, the Clippers and Phoenix. Houston's not very good, but they're capable of it, and Denver is really good. Three probably playoff level teams and a Rockets team sandwiched in there that has enough firepower to be at least annoying. So the Blazers need to figure out if they can win on the road. I asked Chauncey Billups after the game if what they need to do, and he says we're still kind of trying to figure out who we are on the road. And Damian Lillard mentioned the same thing in his interview with Brooke Ozendam on the Blazers television broadcast. They got to figure out if this thing travels because they're a good team at home. Can they be that when they're away from the Moda Center? We'll find out next week. So we'll have shows after that one. After all those games, so they play Tuesday and Wednesday night. So look for Wednesday morning and Thursday morning your recaps from those 2 games. On Monday evening, we'll do a traditional mailbag Monday. So get your questions in at Mike G Rich and Locked On Blazers Pod are the 2 ways to contact me if you want to be involved in our mailbag show, answering listener submitted questions all episode long. Friday's show, Jason Quick of The Athletic will join the program, our weekly guest and a friend of the show. I'm excited to have Jason on as a regular guest, and he's going to be on the road, so he'll tell us what he saw from those first 2 games. We'll unpack those. We'll talk about whatever's going on with Neil, and maybe there will be some sort of resolution with that. So huge week in Blazerland. Tell your friends about this podcast. Tell them to subscribe on YouTube, and tell them they can find the show wherever they already get podcasts. Just search Locked On Blazers, and we will be right there waiting for them. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.